Welcome to the Pressure Washing Pastor Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Brown, and I'm on a mission to call ministers into the marketplace, specifically for you to use your business to be on mission with God and making disciples of all nations. Did you know that you are a leader? And not only are you a leader, that's not really even the question. The question is what kind of leader you are. I want you to listen to some words that Jesus spoke. You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority of them. It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. Even as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. And so in reality, we are all leaders. The question is, are we servant leaders? Are we leading like Jesus taught us to lead? And I want to invite you to use your life as an offering that many people come to know Jesus. One of the goals that I have is to hunt down incredible people like my friend Eric Goldstein. I watched his YouTube video just a few weeks ago, and I was caught off guard that he had posted one video and had more viewers, more subscribers, more followers than the hundreds of videos that we've put in. And then I learned that he fired his CEO himself and replaced it with Jesus. And so to find out more about that, we're going to interview him today. But before we get started, do me a huge favor. I'm on a mission to challenge more people to use their business as a mission place, as a mission field. And so please subscribe, like, and share that we can get more people inside of this movement. Without further ado, here's my friend, Eric Goldstein.
What's happening, Joshua? How are you doing?
My friend, am I saying your last name right?
Yeah, Goldstein. Perfect.
Yeah, for some reason I want to say Stein, like Frankenstein. So I'm like, I hope I don't jack it up.
No, all good. You hit it right on the head.
So I want to get right into the show today. And the first question I'm going to ask you is always the most difficult, but who is Eric Goldstein?
Who is Eric Goldstein? That's a good question. Child of God, son of God, right? I mean, I feel like we're all his children, and we've been put on this planet for specific purposes. So, and I think that's, I think it's a deep question too. I think it's just something that continues to unfold, that I'm still figuring out who Eric Goldstein is, who God made me to be, and why he put me on this planet, and who he really wants me to serve.
Yeah, so good. Can you update me a little bit on where you live, stage of life? Are you married? Any children?
Yeah, so I live in San Diego, California. Moved out here 7 years ago from New York. Grew up my first 40 years in New York. Flew out to California, moved out here. A lot of my good friends moved, so I followed them. And then a few years after being out here, I met my wife. So I met my wife coming up on 3 years in July. I knew the moment that I met her that we were going to get married. Told all my buddies a few days later, proposed to her 7 months later, or 9 months later, got married 3 weeks later. And now we're expecting our first child. She's a little over 7 weeks pregnant.
Hey, congratulations, my friend. That's super, super exciting. When you first said you moved from New York to California, I was going to ask if it was worth it. And then you shared that you met your wife. And so a wise man will say yes, no matter what. So that's awesome.
I feel God had a plan,
Hey, in a second, we're going to get to know your story and specifically your testimony. But before we get into that, why should anybody listen to you as far as like business, your successes? And I know the humble thing is like, hey, nobody should listen to anything, but would you mind just sharing a little bit of what you've done thus far on planet Earth?
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of had the entrepreneurial spirit mindset growing up, always had great grades in school. And my mom was very, very tough about that. But a couple weeks into college, I just walked out. I'm like, this is not for me. And my mom was super upset on all of that. And she told me, what are you going to do with your life? And I told her, I'm going to sell vacuum cleaners. I'm going to sell Curvy vacuum cleaners door to door. So I started doing that at like 17, 18 years old. And actually had pretty good success with that. And I was built myself up after 3 years, running the distributor's office and doing the meetings and trainings and all of that stuff. So I just always loved that, the limitless, I guess, the no ceiling and just like creating and figuring things out. And then from there, I made my way into real estate in New York. And I was a real estate agent for about 9 years there, leading into the '08 crash. That's kind of what took me out after that. But I had good success there. I had built a real estate rental company, national website with a couple of buddies where we built a service where we were renting apartments all around the country. So it's sort of like a dating site for landlords and tenants that we built. And we ran that for about 5 or 8 years. And then from there, I kind of got into the world of home-based business and building things online. So I've kind of played around in that marketing world for a while. And I would say the last 3.5 years, I've been building a business around in the residential solar market. And I've done well there. I've been with a national company with over 7,000 sellers. And last year I was the number 10 seller out of 7,000 there. And so, yeah, that's a little bit quick background of my business or entrepreneurial journey.
Hey, when you shared that you started with Kirby, it reminds me of Rainbow. And it's like every time I buy a new vacuum, I'm like, man, I should have bought that Kirby with the lifetime guarantee.
Oh man, you're knocking doors in Queens, New York, and in the rain, just begging to get into people's homes and turning on the back massager that the vacuum.
That's so funny.
Wild couple of years, yeah.
Have you ever heard of Wild Bill Wilson?
No.
Yeah, there was he started the largest Sunday school class in the world, and it's right there in Brooklyn, Queens area. And basically they do sidewalk Sunday school classes where they take all these buses to the projects and to the streets. The side of the bus goes down, and then they have VBS right there in the neighborhoods. And they would reach like 30-something thousand families every single weekend. And so I had a group that we went and worked with Wild Bill Wilson. Didn't know if you ever saw that ministry while you were there.
No, that's cool.
Is there any like something that you've said to sold to Kirby that you take back and it makes you cringe and wish you never would have said it?
Something I would have said. I mean, probably some of the ways I would just like beg my way sometimes in somebody's house. Like, I'm here to just shampoo a room of carpet. You could just like put me in your worst room and leave me in there. You know, I need to get out of the rain. I need to get out of the cold or whatever. I would just kind of beg my way in. And then I would start pulling those dirt pads, and then next, they come in and check on me, and then I knew that, is my way of kind of luring them into a presentation.
Hey, I'm going to interrupt for a second because we've got a phenomenal opportunity for you. If you've been thinking about opening your own pressure washing company, I'd like to invite you to a free webinar. There we'll talk about the pros and cons of opening a pressure washing, and you'll get to chat with our team about whether or not you should launch a pressure washing company in your city or not. To register for this free event, go to pressurewashingpastor.com, scroll down to the little registration button, it's blue, and click on it, and we'll take care of the rest. I look forward to seeing you there. Have a great day. Now back to our show. Yeah, all right. So that was kind of a leading question to share just a quick story. I know it's about you on this, but I wanted to share one story that was a horror story from Rainbow Vacuum, where we lived in like a low income area. The house was like $70,000, and this guy was selling us like a $1,600 Rainbow vacuum. And after saying no, not interested, the final statement was, how can you live with yourself letting your kids crawl on the floor in your home? Oh my God. When you're newly married and have young kids and you're like, that was like, looking back at it, I'm like, man, that was the worst sales experience ever, because you do look at yourself and be like, man, am I a horrible father because I can't afford the $1,600 Rainbow vacuum?
I know. Yeah, it was my distributor. He was taught us all those closes and all those, and some of them they just didn't really feel great as you were sharing them with the person
Yeah,
who was in front of you.
I was hoping you'd share something that trumped that, where you'd be like, "Dude, I can't believe I said this." This
I think one actually now it reminds me of he would teach us when we were sitting with like a single mom, not a single mom, but a woman and her husband was off at work. And she would be like, I need to speak to my husband about this. And you would kind of we would ask like, where's the garage? And she would bring us, over there and open it and be like, all right, look at all these tools your husband has. Let me ask you a question. Did he ask you before he bought all of these? No, and just like build it up. And I tried that like one time and I was just like, she ended up buying it. And then there was cancellation was the next night when the husband came home. And I was like, oh man, I'm never doing that again.
That's so funny. Yeah. A lot of times in life, we do things that we end up regretting over time. I went through a book called Trust by Dr. Henry Cloud, and he talks about trust is like an immune system. You don't realize that something is a virus until you get around it, and then you learn from the experience that you build your immune system on how to handle different situations. And I think that's kind of like experiences. But I want to get into your backstory. A lot of times you can take like every 15 years, we have like a low, like a major event in our lives. And so if you take how old you are and divide it by 15, you basically may have 3 big time experiences in your life. And they're usually real lows followed by big highs. If I were to look over your life and we were to go through the highs and lows starting, when you were younger, can you kind of just take me through the highs and lows leading up to maybe a testimony?
Yeah, probably the first one I could remember as I was 12 years old, my dad passing, on Christmas Eve morning. And, there was a lot of drama in the house. My mom was, there was a lot of emotional trauma and stuff, childhood stuff. And, but just being involved, being there, and my mom kind of not believing that my dad was not feeling well. And he just didn't want to go to work. He didn't want to take care of the family. And she left me downstairs with him. And then over the night, he'd gotten more and more unresponsive. And here I am, 12 years old, going upstairs. My mom doesn't really want to listen to me. So I'm just downstairs by myself. And I waited till the sun came up. I was like, I can't go knock on my neighbor's door. My mom, she didn't really answer to me. So it must not be that important. And sun came up. I ran down to my neighbor's house. They worked for the ambulance. And next thing you know, there was ambulance, police, firemen. And come to find out my dad passed on the way to the hospital. So that was a pretty big blow at 12 years old, not fully understanding everything that's going on, but, major anger towards my mom, and then a lot of guilt towards myself for waiting. Like what if I would have gone earlier? What if I wouldn't have waited? So I think that was probably the first big low in my life.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. From there, I mean, that's traumatic. I don't even know how to honestly, to follow up with that. When that event takes place, did your family dynamics, did y'all move socially, economically? Take me, what happened from there?
Yeah, we stayed where we're at. And then, now my mom's a single mom with 3 kids, myself and, a sister older and a sister younger. And she just worked overtime, extra hard, and, to provide, make sure, she took on a lot of the masculine, what I feel masculine, female and masculine roles around the home. But, I think within that, coming out of that, I just, I always it gave me a reason to reach out to, I always had good men in my life, whether it was I played soccer from a really young age. So whether it was the soccer coach or, so I think maybe a good, piece that did come out of it gave me that willingness to like reach out for help and support for like a mentor type, father figure type role, which I think is important now, like to always have other people in your life that you could reach out to, or mentors or coaches or support roles. And so I started doing that at a very young age, coming out of that. Because I really wasn't getting that from my mom. My mom and I had a tough, I love my mom now. I forgive her for everything that happened there. But, we had a tough childhood. So it kind of really, motivated me, inspired me to kind of reach out outside of my family for somebody else I could support and mentor.
Yeah. That's wise. If someone is listening to this show and they lost their father at a young age, have you had to go through any type of childhood trauma work, anything like digging it up? Is there any advice that you might have for anybody that has gone through what you've gone through in the past?
Yeah. I mean, there was a ton of it, right? Coming out of my house. Right now I would say go to Jesus. It took me till I was 44 years old. I kind of went down the road of personal development, Tony Robbins and all of that stuff, which led to New Age. And, I was just searching for healing, for 30 years. And I would say, some of it helped and some of it softened the blow, but I feel like the true healing, didn't come until I found Jesus in my life.
I love that. With you sharing that, do you remember the gospel presentation that you heard, and how did you come to know Jesus?
Yeah. So I always had a really good friend of mine, Gene. He actually lives probably near you in Tennessee. He was from New York. And, once or twice a year when I was having kind of a low moment in life, he would always come and want to share the gospel. And I would be like, Gene, come on, get that God stuff away from me. I don't believe in the Bible and all. I just pushed away the Bible my entire life and anything organized, any kind of organized religion. And then in 2021, I met my wife. And 3 weeks later, a really good friend of mine, Ray, who was mentoring me on some financial stuff, flew me out to Kansas to his office there. He's like, I want you to come out. I have this world-renowned Rabbi Daniel Lapin, speaking at my office with 30 men, and I want you to come out. And I said, look, I had just met this woman 3 weeks ago. I believe she's going to be my wife. Can I bring her with me? And he's like, of course. We went out there, and we were both in the New Age space, right? That's kind of like where I met her. And we listened to the rabbi speak for 2 days, and my jaw was just dropped. He just turned my head and my belief system and what I thought was true and not true. Everything was upside down. Oh. So that was kind of like the catapult to it. And then there was kind of, the next couple months it took for me to find church and all of that.
Yeah. And when would you say that you transitioned from like kingdom of like uncertain New Age darkness into whereas like you came into a relationship with Jesus Christ?
Yeah. I mean, that was August, first weekend of August of 21. We flew home and we're living in the middle of Encinitas, New Age capital of San Diego, of the country practically. We're like, all right, let's just see what God has. Like, let's not do anything drastic here. And the rabbi was helping me. He was connecting me with his cousin to see if I could find a synagogue. Cause I'm like, all right, maybe I'll go that route. I'll go back to my Jewish roots, right? My mom and dad were both Jewish, and that didn't feel in alignment. Nothing was clicking. And then a friend of mine who I knew from the New Age space was reaching out to me, and he's like, hey man, you should check out this church here in San Diego. It's super cool. A lot of entrepreneurs. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to find a synagogue and all this stuff. And then it was November of 21, and I had just started in solar a little bit before that. And he said, hey, I'm sponsoring the business conference that our church is putting on. And I have a free ticket. I have a ticket for you if you want to come. I think you would love it. And here I am. I'm like, I need to go network. I need to go meet people. I'm new in solar, so I'll go to that. Not thinking anything of it. And I got there and I was just blown away how they talked about God in the marketplace. And it just blew my mind. That was a 2-day conference. And the next Sunday, me and my wife, girlfriend at the time, started attending church and started going to service.
Yeah, that's awesome. What church is it, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, Awaken Church in San Diego.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then it took me, that was November. It took me till about January to give my life to Jesus, because here I am in this church and I'm Jewish and confused. And, I grew up Jewish and my mom and dad never spoke about God. We had a Christmas tree, like we celebrated Christmas. My mom didn't want us to feel different. So when I left the house, I was super confused. And that's how I feel like the enemy led me to personal development down that world. So it took me a little while. I'm like, I don't even have anybody, like if I'm allowed to be here in this church. I'm Jewish. They might, if they know, they might kick me out, type of thing. But there was this one pastor, Pastor Alex Klott. He got up and he spoke and he talked about, he grew up half Jewish and half Catholic, and his story super resonated with me. And I sat down with him and chatted and had a really good conversation. And then pretty much the beginning of 22, that January, I gave my life to Jesus.
Yeah, praise the Lord. And I want to thank you for sharing your testimony. If we had a ton of time, I'd love to unpack understanding, what all looks like for New Age. We're here in Nashville, and I think New Age is so deceptive because it comes wrapped in so many different packages. Is there any warning or anything that you'd be like, hey, you might be involved in a New Age movement if you're in, because it very much, sometimes it packages itself as Christian or as a relationship with God. Can you kind of speak to like what's the one or two big differences that you notice by practicing or being involved in the New Age movement versus coming to Yeshua being your Messiah?
Yeah. And I think one of the big things is idolatry, right? It's like idolizing things that God created, the universe, right? The universe or source or nature. Like, there was just so much love for trees and nature and all of this, and nothing wrong with all that stuff. They're God's creations, but like we shouldn't be idolizing them or the universe. It's like God who created the universe, right?
That's so good.
And it was just, and for me, it's just like, I think that's a big piece of the New Age where they get stuck. It's just this ethereal, it sounds really good and it's very self-centered in a way. A lot of it's like, part of the New Age space that I was in, it's like, do what feels good to you. And it's all about your happiness and everything, which, totally opposite, I feel, of Christianity. And I mean, look, not that we're not all after happiness. And I think there's ultimate joy and ultimate happiness found in Jesus. But in the New Age space, there's a lot of deception there pulling us away from it. But I think the big thing is just the idolizing the universe and that kind of, a lot of that talk.
Got a question for you. Who is the greatest leader of all time? I know for many of us, we're going to point to our mom and our dad, or maybe even a coach or a school teacher that made a massive impact in our lives. But if we were to zoom back out of our area and look at the entire globe or of all of human history that we look back on, who do we want to look as a case study as being the greatest of all time? And I think it's going to be very difficult for us to find a greater leader than Jesus Christ. If he is one of the greatest, if not the greatest leader of all time, why don't we talk about it? Why don't we study his leadership, his game plan, his way of making an impact inside of this world? So I want to invite you to join me in my breakout session on Lead Like Jesus. During our time together, I'm going to teach you how to be a mission-driven leader. We're going to walk through the frameworks that I learned from Donald Miller as a certified business coach on how to create a mission statement. And more importantly, if you have a desire to make a difference with your business, we're going to talk about it. One thing we do here is we wash widows' houses in Nashville for free. I've even opened up a nonprofit, and I'll share with you a little bit on how you can do that. And I just want you to know, I am stoked to have the opportunity to share a little bit about my life and get to know a little bit about yours and teach you how to make an impact while making an income. I want your business to grow, but more important than your business growing is actually what you're doing as you're growing your business. And we're going to talk about how to be a mission-led business inside your community.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And because sometimes you can't recognize that they're wolves in sheep's clothing. And so it's so easy when you just see with the outside eyes, you don't recognize that you're being deceived the whole time. And then if a lot of people follow it, sometimes it's like, I guess everything's okay here. Are you familiar with Sigmund Freud and Viktor Frankl?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is a kind of a setup question as far as like meaning and purpose in life. They knew each other for our audience, and they had two different philosophies. One of them believed that man's primary purpose on planet Earth was pleasure, where whatever we do to get joy, that's where meaning is found. And then, Viktor Frankl kind of said, no, man distracts himself with pleasure when he has no purpose. Where do you stand philosophically when it comes to man's purpose? Why does man exist on planet Earth?
Yeah. I read Victor's Man's Search for Meaning a long time ago. But yeah, I think man's purpose, big portion of it is to glorify God, right? Like we've been made in his image. And I just love, 1 Corinthians 10:31 is, do all things for the glory of God. And so I think, we're made in his image, and we're here to like reflect his goodness here on planet Earth. So I think that's, for me, something I'm learning even in my walk with Christianity right now, and walk in faith is that like, that I am here to glorify God.
Yeah, it's so rich. And what, if you think about if purpose is found in pleasure, who's found it? Right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know anybody that has fulfilled themselves with enough pleasure where it's like, yeah, I'm good. I've had enough. I've found my everything. And it's like, for whoever loves money will never have enough. And it's like the wisdom of God's word is greater than man's wisdom. And then you get it. So, if you look at Tom Brady, he won 3 Super Bowls, and it's like, this is it. The most disappointing times in a person's life is after they get what they were looking for and find out it wasn't there,
And I feel sometimes, we got to learn those lessons in a hard way. I shared on one of my videos recently, just my testimony around money. Like I really felt like my purpose on this planet I was driven by performance and driven by money. And I just had greed. And I got caught up in the crypto markets, and nothing wrong with the crypto markets. But it's, the heart posture going into it. The morning after I got married, I woke up and I had the markets crashed, and I had lost about $150,000 overnight. And then it continued to bleed to like hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next week or two. And I just feel like I needed, at the moment, it didn't feel really good, but it's like, it's what I needed for God to like help me heal my heart around money. And we were sitting in our church service one day, and the main pastor was speaking, and he said something that just totally blew me away. He was talking about money, and we were talking about offerings and giving. And he said, does money have you, or do you have money? And that just like threw me back in my chair. And it was a month after I had lost all that money. And I realized, I'm like, okay, God's doing something here. He's working on my heart here. I don't like how it's being done. But I'm going to keep leaning in here and see what he's got.
I love that. One thing I want to say just to you is that your pace of conversation is presence. And so I really enjoy just how you're processing and thinking and sharing. I feel like the Lord is really using you, and you're in a sweet spot. And I really appreciate your presence on here. One thing that you shared during your pre-questions was that God had to change your view on money. And so just curious, when you look at purpose being glorifying God, what did you exchange, or how do you practically exchange what you used to find purpose in and how you find purpose today in what you do?
Yeah. I think now just looking at like what I have is because of him, that he's given me to steward, and it's my job to steward that territory or that job really, really well, and to like serve his people and really take care of his people. It's been, and I'm still walking it out, right? It's still this shift around just like worshiping and praising him, and knowing that he's put me over these things. He's the one who promotes me. He's the one who puts me in these positions. So it's just really kind of like releasing all of that, releasing like that it's mine, like this selfishness, this selfish oneness type feeling of it, that I'm really here to steward what he has given me.
Yeah. So let me word it like this. What are you doing today that brings you the most joy inside of business, or what you do in business? Where do you find the most joy currently in what you do?
Yeah. I think it's been money.
Yeah, it's not making money anymore. So now you have found a new joy. I want to hear what that new joy is.
Yeah, I think the new joy is like spreading his word and speaking his word into the marketplace. I'm continuing to do what I'm doing right now in solar and all of that. And but I felt the call from God about a month ago to launch a YouTube channel, and just speak his word into the marketplace, into business. And it's a new venture, and right, starting something new. There's usually not any money or anything coming from it yet. And I actually don't know the direction of it, but I'm going to be obedient and just follow. But I get a lot of joy out of like taking the time to research, put content together, really get into prayer and like ask God, what do you want? What do you want me to share? And I'm just really enjoying this process and just finding a lot of joy in the value that it's bringing to others. I read each and every comment. There's been 1,000, 2,000 comments, and I love reading the comments. I love getting in there, praying for people, and just like knowing that I am being a servant of the Lord.
A minister in the marketplace. It's so good. One of the things that I caught on your show was about firing yourself and letting God be the CEO. If there was somebody that is currently kind of wanting to do that but don't know exactly what that looks like, what would be some practical practices that you would encourage somebody in firing themselves and then replacing themselves with Jesus? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think just one, spending time finding out what God says about business. What does he say about money? Spending time in his word, and spending time in prayer, giving it to God, letting him know, God, like, I give this to you. I give this to you, because I think there's certain things in people's lives that are like, all right, God, I give you this, but I don't give you this, or I keep you out of business. But just giving it to him. Getting into deep prayer and deep worship and just letting him know that, God, I give this to you. I give you my business. I worship you. I know that you've put me here, and ask, pray and ask God, lead me, guide my steps. Show me the people, show me who you want me to serve, and show me how you want me to serve them. Because for a while I was just asking God to like bless my business, give me favor over but it's still very self-centered. But the moment that I released it to him and said, God, this is yours and I'm here to serve you, and show me how, I feel like that's when everything really started to shift.
What advice would you give, if any, if I'm working for somebody and the person that I work for, they're not in that space? Like, let's say I work for somebody and their why is to make money off of my work. If I'm an employee, how do I feel like we have a lot of listeners that may work for somebody else and they feel like they're helping somebody else make money, or it's not any mission. Any advice for the guy that is working for somebody, how they could, I don't know. I mean, this might be a problem that we have to solve together, but what advice would you give somebody that's working with somebody and the person they're working with has a mind that they're Christian, but their mind is all about making money? Is there anything that person can do? Do they go and confront their boss? Like, how could they go about changing? Can they change the person that they work for?
Yeah, I guess it depends on that relationship, but I would first start with myself, right? Because really, whatever that person does doesn't matter. Like God placed you in that spot. He placed you in that position to steward it well. And there's maybe some things that God's trying to work out and have you walk out in your life, and He needs you to be in that job, in that position, dealing with what's going on currently in that moment, to be able to have that that healing or that breakthrough. Right. So I would just stay focused on one, like, okay, I accepted this job. And here are the guidelines and everything, and still just show up 100%, be a good employee, right? Steward it well, So I don't know. I don't know if I would confront the owner unless I had some sort of friendly relationship with them. But for me too, I would be, if that was me, I would stay showing up 100%. Being a good employee, do what I'm supposed to be doing, but I would be looking and searching my own heart on, all right, God, what else do you have for me? What purpose am I here for? Who do you want me to talk to? What gifts have you given me? How do you want me to serve? And I'd start thinking about what I can do on the side, in the evenings, on the weekends.
If you didn't know by now, we have created the #1 video courses on starting and scaling a pressure washing company on the market.
That's right. But head knowledge will only take you so far. You need the hands-on experience.
So what we crafted for you guys is an Experience Nashville 3-day boot camp. 2 days in the field, learning everything as it relates to pressure and soft washing and how the systems work, and 1 full day of breakout sessions with Joshua and myself. Visit pressurewashingpastor.com, scroll down till you see a link to my calendar. We will grab a call together and figure out how to get you here to Nashville.
And then we will see you in Nashville.
Back to the show.
You went to your church does something kind of unique, and it's something I think almost every church should put into practice. And anytime you paint with a wide paintbrush, I know we shouldn't do that. But when you shared with me what your church does, because at the church I go to, it's a mega church, and the pastor is very intentional, does a phenomenal job of calling Christian business owners to use their business as a place for God's mission. But there's nothing intentional currently for like a business owner to go to learn how to use their business as mission. Can you share a little bit about what your church does and what you learned inside of that space?
Yeah. So at Awaken Church, Pastor Jurgen, I just want to honor him for just the amazing man. And 18 years here, came over from Australia and planted Awaken Church, just heard God's word, never been to America, and brought his family, wife, and 3 kids and planted a church. And just amazing man. He's just really good at developing leadership. So Awaken's got 10 or 11 locations now. And what I like about it, it's not more of a mega church, because each location maybe can hold 600 to 1,000 people, and they plant one 15, 20 minutes from each other. And then he raises up leaders to take over that church, right? There's just a campus pastor there. But they started a business ministry called Pathfinders. And they have a program called Pathfinders Apprenticeship, where usually each season they do 2 seasons a year, and you have to take 3 interviews to get interviewed to get accepted. There's usually 300-400 people that apply, and then they usually take about 70, 80, 90 people. And then you're in a 6-month mastermind every Tuesday night from 6 to 9. And then there's homework and reading and all types of stuff you have to do, and projects. And we have some amazing speakers come in, and they just come in and they pour into you about the marketplace, about why God created business, and about hitching your business to the kingdom. And I took that program in, was that two years ago? The month I took it, and it's not like they teach you a lot of good skills and all of that stuff, but the month I took it, my revenue doubled. And then the next month, my revenue doubled. And it continued to double for like 6 months in a row. And I was implementing something, but it was more this mindset of why I'm doing business. And my business is not really for me, that it is to serve God and serve his people. But yeah, it's just an amazing program that they do now. And my wife is graduating tomorrow night. She just completed 6 months. while being, pregnant and everything like that, but because she's got her own business that she's looking to launch. But it's just an amazing program that I wish, a lot more churches too would take on.
Is she wanting to launch a pressure washing business?
She's launching organic skincare, magnesium body butter company.
Bleach is organic,
Yeah.
It's good.
But I think like you and I, we were having a conversation earlier, right? A lot of churches, they just do amazing work, amazing ministry, but a lot of it's kept inside the four walls, right? And Pathfinder's apprenticeship, it's not just business. A large portion of people go through the program for business, but they kind of believe in the 7 mountains, sort of like what Lance Wallnau will talk about, right? That God is shaking the world right now. And that's why we're in this world that we're seeing with all the evil and the corruption. It has to happen. And the 7 gates, right? You got media, education, business, politics, arts, and you got all these mountains, and God is shaking them, and he's going to raise up, he's going to crumble those people at the top, and he's raising up and promoting his people. So they kind of built the program around that, right? That Pathfinders is about raising up people in the marketplace, in arts and entertainment, in education and politics, and sending them out into the world, to share the gospel, to share the good news.
Yeah, you just mentioned, I watched this dude's video that was posted like 20 years. I feel like it was 20 years ago. It was like not on StreamYard or, Riverside, but he had a book that's called like The 9 to 5. I took notes on it. Is that the guy that you're talking about? Because I ended up watching the video and he talked about 7 ways of affecting, society, or.
It might have been. I know a lot of people have kind of taken it in different ways, but Lance Wallnau, he's amazing. He's spoken at our church many times. But even his stuff right now on YouTube, his live shows, he's talking about it.
Okay.
And he's like, that's kind of what's going on in the world right now. So yeah, I think, I think we as Christians, we need to be open to that calling. And if God's put a calling on your heart in business and in education and arts and entertainment and politics, like God's going to raise up and promote his people to the top of those mountains.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I want to encourage our listeners, if you're not, drinking the water yet or the Kool-Aid, I want to encourage you that God desires to reach people through us. And so when we look at the disciples, the word taught that these were ordinary, untrained people. And the high priest noticed that they had spent time with Jesus. And so if we're going to be on fire and change the world, we just have to spend more time with Jesus, and then he'll set us on fire to go into the world. And so I want to thank you for being a guest today. I'm going to finish with one question, and it's kind of morbid, to be honest with you. I don't know if you're prepared for it. But let's say that this is your last message on planet Earth, and this is going to be in a vault, and you can only leave one message behind before you are no longer on this planet anymore. This is a message for your son or daughter that's going to be here. What one message would you leave for others to find when you're no longer here?
Yeah, I think it would be, search your heart, figure out your gift, figure out the gift that God planted, because I believe he planted a different gift in each and every one of us, right? We're all made in his image, but we all have a piece of him, and different gifts. And I believe he planted it there for us to use it to serve others, to serve his children. So I guess my message would be that, search your heart, figure out what that is, figure out what that gift is. We all have one. And then use it to serve others. And I just love, 1 Peter 4-10, where it says each of you should use whatever gift you have, to serve others. With a new baby coming into the world, that's definitely going to be one message that I'm going to just implant in their heart and mind as well.
Yeah, so good. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of the show. For anybody that's listening and they want to find out more about you, or to check out your YouTube channel, or to just learn more about you, where would you like for them to go?
Yeah, I guess Main spot is YouTube. It's just Eric Goldstein at YouTube. Also on Instagram, it's just ericgoldstein.io.
Yeah, so good. And your channel's blowing up. So I would imagine that God's going to be using you in a great and mighty way to influence more people. So praise God on that. And then anybody that is looking to find out more as far as like what you're really good at, there's a book called Your Divine Fingerprint. It was written by Keith Craft, and it gives a think, be, do framework. And so if you're trying to figure out what God has created you for, I would encourage you to pick up that book. Now, don't drink all the Kool-Aid that he might teach, because I think there's a lot of prosperity outside of that book motivation. But for a book just to have you sit back and start processing your unique fingerprint using your stories and what God desires to do in your life, it's powerful. And so check out Your Unique Fingerprint. But until next time, I'll see you in the future. Peace.
Have a good day, everybody.